Alright, this is AFX Tricks. Today I'm going to show you how to make this sweet 3D text here. There's a boatload of techniques in this tutorial, so this might be a little bit of a longer one. But this is mainly inspired by like 70s B movies, and specifically like 70s blaxploitation movies, because they have some really awesome posters back in the day. And first we're going to create this sort of front text here with layer styles, and then we're going to I'm going to show you how to do the 3D part with expressions. So it's a little bit of an intro to expressions too, and I'm going to try and explain everything as simple as possible for those who aren't familiar with expressions. And it's basically like a bunch of really simple techniques, so don't be too scared. It's really simple math, and I'll show you how to do all of it. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do a new composition here, 1920 by 1080, about 15 seconds long is fine. We'll go ahead and create our text, call it Dynamite, and the font I'm using is Cooper STD. It's an old school font, very roundy, very reminiscent of, like, 60s and sort of 70s movies, that sort of stuff. We increase the size a little bit here. Maybe make sure put the tile action safe and put it in the center. And then we'll go ahead. We're going to use layer styles, and it's there's actually 3 layers. So I'm not going to lie. This took me a while to get the colors right and the positions right on all of this. So it took quite a bit of experimentation to get that sort of bronzy old school look to it. So first we're going to add a Bevel Emboss. You right click on the layer, go to Layer Styles, Bevel and Emboss, and we're going to change this just down to 2, the size to 2, and I think maybe the highlight opacity to 100. I think that's about it we're going to do for the Bevel and Emboss. Then right click again, and we're going to go to Layer Styles, Gradient Overlay. Now this is going to be the very bottom layer. So on this we're going to add this stroke to 10, and we're only going to see the edges of this, and then we'll hit an edit gradient. Now let me see if I can get these colors right. We're going to knock at the beginning, and we want a sort of a reddish orange color, maybe like in here, like that. Add another knock and move it up in sort of this sort of cream area. See if I can get that right. And then add another knock somewhere around the center. We're going to move it up closer to a yellowish, like that. And then we're going to move this knock over. Move this one over. Whoops, I don't want that. I want this one. And if you add one and you don't, and you need to delete it, just drag it off. Move this over here, and then we'll use this light one again. Nope. So it's gonna look something like this, and this color here probably needs to be a little bit darker. The trick to sort of getting these right is getting the contrast right, and that can be a little difficult. It takes a lot of experimentation to get this right, so I'll give you the hex values on all of this stuff, but it's kind of better if you sort of experiment on your own and try to do it yourself. And I used references for this, so that's always a good idea to have reference material to look at while you're sort of recreating this. Now we're going to change the style down here to reflected. So yeah, that looks pretty good, and this is just sort of around it. This is we're not going to see all of this, we're just going to see the edges. So we're going to take this layer and duplicate it. Now this one, let's go ahead and see here. Come down to Layer Styles, Gradient Overlay, and pull a bunch of these knocks off. And we're going to move this one over, this dark to the right. Move this one somewhere about here, like this one, and then this one is going to be close to white. Maybe something like that. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to recreate this exactly because, like I said, it took quite a while to get this to look right. Let's see, let's look at this again. And you know, we don't want this reflective, we want this linear. There we go, that looks a little bit better. And so we have, and make sure for this top layer here, we want to bring this down back to 0. So as you can see, we're already starting to get there to see how it looks. Now duplicate the layer again. So this is going to be our very top layer. And for this one, we're going to create a mask. So grab your pen tool, go to, we want to view, show grid, and then view also snap to grid. Make sure that is on. And we're going to create points here that snap to the grid. And I hope you're familiar with the pen tool, because if you're using it for the first time, you're going to find it really frustrating. It takes a little while to get used to this. But we're going to create a point and drag it out. And we're going to do about every, like this. Oops, let's go ahead and do that. Put this, get rid of the title action safe so I can actually see the grid, and do this here. Whoops. Be about like that, and we're just going to move right across the width of our workspace here, creating this sort of curvy line. It's a little tedious, but you know, it's not too bad. And keep moving right across till you cover the whole text. Like this. And then we're just going to go ahead and wrap it around here. So we have that sort of bottom layer. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. And this is going to sit on top of everything. And we're going to come down, go to layer styles again, gradient overlay. We're going to edit the gradient one more time. And we're going to move this over. And this is going to be maybe more of a yellowish here. Something maybe like a creamy color like that. And let's see what everything looks like here. And what do you know, that actually doesn't look bad on a first try. And you know, you can tweak it. We can move these knots over because we want that dark color to show up. We want this dark color to show up right on the edge here. So we could move it over. Move these knocks over a little bit. Knocks. And then we can get rid of the grid. And yeah, see, there you go. Not too bad. And you know, you can obviously tweak this a little bit more to sort of get the colors you want. Like on this middle layer, this could be a little bit brighter and maybe more of a cream color. I think that has to do with this one. Yeah, see, there you go. That's a little bit better. Yeah, so it's not too bad. There is our layer styles. I'll give you the hex values on each of these so you can see, and I think it's pretty much the same ones on each except for maybe some of the yellow cream colors, but I'll give them to you. So you can sort of recreate it. So yeah, now that we have our text, we're going to go ahead and new composition, 1920 by 1080 is fine, about 15 seconds. And we're going to drag that first comp. We'll call this text main. And then this second comp here, we're going to call text effects. Alright, now we're in our text effects. We're going to drag our text main in. Hit F4, or, you know, if you need to bring up these boxes. We want to make sure it's 3D. And before we get to the expressions, we need to create a bunch of controls. So we're going to go layer, new, null object, call this controls, and we're going to add, let's see, we're going to add a slider control. We're going to add another slider control. Controls. We're going to add a checkbox control. What else? We're going to add color control, expression, another color control, and a, what else here? Another slider control. And I'll explain these once what each of these does when I get to them. This first one we're going to call distance between layers. Second one we'll call the brightness depth. We'll call this third one, the checkbox control, a 3D. Whoops, 3D. Just on and off is fine. We'll call this color control depth color 1. Depth color 2, and then this last one, depth color blend. And so we'll just change the values real quick here. Distance between layers change to 1, brightness change to 1. We can leave the 3D on and off right now. This depth color, yeah, we might as well just change it now. We'll do sort of like a dark brown like that. And then the second one, we're going to do maybe something like this. And then this depth color blend just change to 50. I'll explain all this when we get to it in a minute. Okay, so for this first one, this text main, I think we only have to add a brightness and contrast to it. I think that's all we have to add for that. And yeah, that is. And then we're going to duplicate this layer, and on this second one, do we have to add anything? Yeah, we do. We have to add a ramp like that. Okay, now to get to some of the expression stuff. First of all, let's go ahead and select that top layer there, hit P. After Effects uses JavaScript as an expression language, and something like 95% of the time when we're using expressions, we're just using them to make things easier, to make things more easy to edit, to change things. There are some expression stuff that you can't do otherwise without expressions, but like a lot of the time, all this sort of stuff that I'm about to do, is used to make things easier. Because the way we're going to create this 3D text, and this is an old school method, but it still gets used quite a bit, is just by stacking a bunch of layers on top of each other, and to fake a 3D look to it. So the reason why we're using a bunch of expressions is that when I start to duplicate these layers, is that if I want to change something, then I have to go to each and every single layer and change that property. And that's kind of a huge pain. So if we create expressions, we can go to the controls and change whatever we need, and it'll automatically change all the layers. Because we're going to have, you can create as many as you want, but we'll probably use like 30 or 40 layers, and you don't want to, you want to change one minor thing. You don't want to go through 30 or 40 layers and change it. That just takes up way too much time. It's a huge waste. And so if we have the controls here, then we can just change this value, and it's going to change all the successive layers. So yeah, that's why we're doing this. So to get started, alt click on this position here, and just to explain something, this is not something that I understood right off the part, or right at the beginning when I started using this. If we link this to, this is a pick whip, if we link this to this first value, you see you get this temp transform.position 0. Well, what exactly does that mean? Let me link this to this value just for the heck of it. Here you go. Now you're going to see this comp layer, blah, 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 blah. You see this a lot if you ever link stuff, and half the time I didn't know exactly what this means, but we'll get rid of this temp. I'll get to that in a minute. What it's basically saying is you need, this here says this composition, this is like a directory. It's saying this comp, meaning this composition, text effects, layer, and it's specifying a layer. Text, if it's in quotes, then it's looking for the name of a layer. And for this one, it's text main 2, which is right here, right? We linked here. And then it's saying transform, and yeah, I keep getting that error. Transform, it's looking under transform, position, and then 0. And I'll explain what 0 is in a minute, but this is just sort of saying like a directory. It's like saying where, this is just a location is all this is. It just tells you where, what we link to, what values we're getting, okay? So we're going to delete that, and now I'm going to explain to you sort of, and it's better if we do it on this one here, bring up position. Go ahead and alt click on that and make this a little bit bigger. For position values, at its default, you can, what it's giving you is 3 values, and if it's more than 1 value, then it's called an array. In 3D software like Cinema 4D or 3D Max or Maya or any of that sort of stuff, they call it a vector, but it's pretty much the same thing. Now if you want, and this may be a trick that you know or not know, if you right click on position, you can separate the dimensions, so then it's not an array anymore. Then we just have single values on each of these, but we're not going to do that. That would be easier, but the reason I'm keeping it as it is so I can show you, so I can demonstrate how this sort of works. And what we're going to do is create a couple variables, a few variables here, and a variable is just a container. Computer programmers and people like that use variables to make things easier. If they have a boatload of code with a whole bunch of math stuff and there's numbers in there and they need to come back to it and change some of the numbers, then they have to walk through all the code and find out what number does what. But if you create a variable, then and you know, typically variables at the very top of the code, then you can name the variable whatever you want, and you can sort of, without having to go digging through all kinds of code and figuring out what it is you wrote, you can just name the variable brightness or something, so you automatically know you change that number and that variable will change in the code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple variables. Now obviously this is X, Y, and Z, but After Effects doesn't refer to it that way. When referring to arrays, it doesn't go, oh, it's X, Y, and Z. It actually goes by numbers. It goes by 0, 1, and 2. And if there were more, then it would be 3, 4, 5. But just remember that it starts at 0. Something like, I think it's almost all computer languages start at 0. So let's go ahead and create an array. We'll call it X. You can create an array with any name whatsoever as long as it doesn't use expression or After Effects. Like you can't create an array called dot or sub or mul or anything that the JavaScript uses, but you can call it anything else. So we're going to go ahead and create this. We're going to call it x equals, and we don't want to change the x or the y values here. The only thing we want to change is the z, and as we duplicate the layers, each successive layer is going to move 1 pixel backwards, or forwards, I guess. And forwards is away from the camera in this instance. So we don't want to change x. So we could link it just straight here to x, transform position 0, and then that's we have to tell it which one of these numbers we want to use, and since it's a 0, we're grabbing this number, 0, 1, 2, right? Now you can do it this way, this is fine, but the thing is, if you use transform.position 0, that locks this value. So I can't actually change this, I can't move this with this expression in place. But if you use value, and I usually use value only because it's quicker to type, and I don't ever really change these positions. In this particular instance, I don't change these x and y. But you know, with value, if I use this bracket 0, then I can change this still, and the expression still works as well. So we're going to do that. So x equals value 0. X equals whatever this is, or whatever the value of what it already is, and we're specifying this number right here, 0, 0, 1, 2. Okay? I hope this makes sense. Then we're going to do y, same thing, value 1. Why? Because this is the y value, and 1 because that's how After Effects refers to it, as this is 1, right? Now z is going to be a little bit different. We're going to get another error message on this top layer, and make sure you're putting the expressions on the second layer. There's multiple ways to do this, but to do this sort of stacked text thing, but I'm just showing you the way I do it. So hit position on this top layer, and we're going to hit the pick whip here, and connect it to the third value, or 0, 1, 2, the second here, and this is the z position. So here we go. We have this third z is going to reference this one up here, right? This comp layer text main, that's referring to this one, transform position 2, which is right here. Okay. Add a semicolon with JavaScript inside After Effects. After you do a line, you have to add a semicolon. And then finally, since we just created a bunch of variables, After Effects doesn't know what to do with that, so we have to then tell it that we want to use x, y, and z. So it's bracket x, y, comma, z. All right? So that's connected. Now we need to say we want to add a number to this second layer, because we're going to be pushing these in space, in z space, right? So I could just do +1, which works, but instead, just for a little more flexibility, all I do is click on this controls layer, and we're going to lock it down and just keep it locked, because we're going to connect everything. We're going to highlight that 1, use the pick whip, and connect it to distance between layers, right? And as you see, this thing pops up. It says this comp layer controls. It's referring to this layer, effect, and then distance between layers. And you see it's in quotes because it's referring to the effect distance between layers, which is this up here. See? And then it just says slider. So yeah, there we go. It's saying whatever this layer is, text main, which is this this one here, plus this number. That's what the z value is going to be. And as you can see, it changed to 1. So we're almost done with this part. And keep in mind, this is the most complicated part here for me to explain this. It's going to get a little bit easier as we move on. Sometimes it's going to be just connecting stuff. So yeah, there we go. But here's a small problem. Now, if I duplicate this layer a couple times, you see that everything stays at 1. We want it to go 0, 1, 2, 3, to move backwards in space. Now this is a trick that you need to know, and it's really useful to do this trick. So what it's saying is all these layers are referring to this text main layer, and we don't want it to refer to that layer. We want it to refer to its previous layer. So as we duplicate things down, then this will be referring to this layer. You know, this layer will be referring to whatever the layer it is before it, right? So how we do that is when you put quotation marks, it's referring to like a name of something. So we're going to keep the parentheses and get rid of this, right? And we're going to do index. Index refers to this number right here. That's what the index is. And then we're going to do index minus 1. So when you type index, it refers to this number of the layer that you're on, right? 3. So index minus 1 is going to refer to the layer before it, 2, right? So now, as we duplicate, see, this number starts to increase. It's only referring to the layer before it, and it's saying, get that number. This code is saying, get this number right here, and then add 1. And I added a control here so that if I change this number to, it's saying get the layer before it and add 2. See? 0, 2, 4, 6. That's the sort of trick for this position stuff, and it is useful. This index thing you can use quite a bit to space different things out evenly. You can use it for a lot of different things, so it's very useful. And make sure there's no quotes in here because this isn't. We're not referring to a name of something. We're using index is a JavaScript After Effects word. All right. So there we go. That is how you do the position deal. I hope this makes sense. If you guys have questions, you can drop a comment or whatever. Now, what else do we have on this layer? We have to move along and do the rest of the effects here, right? So we have a ramp and we have a brightness. So since this brightness is next on the controls, we'll do that. And we're going to do the same thing with the brightness. It's only one value, so we don't have to worry about creating variables. We can just do it real quick here. So alt-click on that, and we're going to go ahead and grab the brightness from the previous layer, right? We're only working with 2 layers. All the expressions are pretty much just going to go on this second layer here, right? I'm going to go minus. And the trick for this brightness is that as the layers go back in space, they also are going to get a little bit darker. So we're kind of faking lighting. That's pretty much what we're doing. So we're going to grab this brightness depth, right? So it says this comp text. We're going to change this to, you got it, index minus 1. Same thing. We're going to grab the brightness and contrast effect from the previous layer, right? Not the, in this case it's this layer, but as we duplicate it's going to be the previous layer for whatever it is. And we're going to say minus this number up here, this 1. So as you see, we got a -1. And if we duplicate again, -2. So every time we duplicate, it's going to be 1 less than the previous layer. That's what the index does, index minus 1. So now that that's connected, and we don't want to duplicate everything just yet, what else do we have here? And I think that's it for that index trick. I hope you guys understand that what I'm trying to do here is that it's successive, is that numbers change with each layer. And for the ramp, all we have to do is connect this color, right? Connect it to depth color 1. Oh, we don't want the end to ramp, it's the wrong one. And end to color 2, we're going to connect that here, right? Real simple, we can delete that. Depth color 1, depth color 2, hope this makes sense. And then blend with original, we're going to connect that to depth color blend. So this is a ramp, so you know, it just how much of the ramp you actually want to see, and we only want to see about 50% for this particular effect. So we can roll that up, and what else? So we have these two main effects that are connected. Now the only thing we have to add left is this 3D on and off. And now I add this effect because when you stack layers like this and you're editing it, it's pretty render intensive, and it takes a while for frames to render, you know. So we can turn it on and off real easily with just a checkbox. We can turn off like 30 layers with a single checkbox. That's the point of this. Now keep in mind, these checkboxes in pretty much any you know, program or and a lot of different things, they only output either 0 or 1. So if it's not checked, it's 0, and if it's 1, then it's on, right? And what we need to do is to say if it's off, it's 0, and if it's on, the checkbox is on, then we want it to be 100. Now it's real easy to do that. Just link it up and then do times 100. So if this is off, 0 times 100 is 0, and if it's on, which is 1, then 1 times 100 is 1. Pretty easy. I hope that makes sense. That's another nice little trick. You'll use that a lot too if you get into using expressions. It's very easy to turn things on and off using a checkbox, and using a checkbox, animating with a checkbox, automatically defaults to hold frames. So that's nice. So you don't have to worry if you're animating something and opacity either 0 or 100, then it's a lot easier to use a checkbox than it is just to click this opacity a bunch of times and have, you know, more keyframes than what you really need. So now if we hit U here, I think this is all of our expressions, and I hope all of this makes sense to you, right? So at this point, I think we can start duplicating. Now this checkbox is off right now. We'll turn it on in a minute, and we'll go ahead and duplicate this a bunch of times. Maybe to like 30 or so, right? And we'll go ahead and save our file just for the hell of it. Now if we go to the controls and we turn on that checkbox, it's going to take a second because it's got to work a bunch of different layers here. There is our 3D text. So yeah, pretty easy stuff. And you see I added this ramp on these layers to all these layers have ramps on them except for the top one, just to sort of blend things a little bit better. Now if you want, you can go to Layer, New, Null Object, Layer, New, Camera. Let's go ahead and set it to 35 is fine. Move the null to the top, make sure it's 3D. Link the camera to the null, right? This is just cam control. Whoopsie. And hit R for rotation. On this Y value, we're going to change it to, I don't know, like 45. Wait for it to render here. Yeah, as you can see why I added that checkbox, because it takes a while. If you're going to actually animate a bunch of stuff, I would say leave this off and then turn it on when you're about to render. And there you go. There is our text. Very 3D, cool looking, not too shabby, right? And you know, we'll change the distance to layers to 1. And if you want, you can bring down this a little bit, so bring down the resolution a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So it makes it a little bit tighter, right? And if this brightness decreases, right, with each, let's make sure we got that right. I'm pretty sure I did, yeah. Decreases with each successive layer. And you know, you can turn it up if you want. That's the reason why these are here, so we can adjust. If we don't like a look, or if we want to tweak something, then we can change it up here without having to do it, 30 times on each one of these layers. Everything is linked very easily. So yeah, that's how you do that. That's how you create that 3D text. Obviously, this isn't a tutorial too much on animation as it is on expressions and layer styles and how to get this sort of 3D look. So for this cam control, we'll bring it back, and since I think that's about it, right, for creating this 3D text. And I'll walk you real quick on how to do the rest of this stuff. Like I said before, this main text is Cooper, and then for the fistful here, I'll show you. Let's see, it's right here. Fistful is a font called Colors of Autumn, and you can find that on the font as well. And as you see, I have a ramp on this, or it's just a gradient, a layer style gradient overlay. Yeah, real simple, like that. And then in the main composition here, I also added a drop shadow, opacity set to 100%. So yeah, and it's just wiped on. It just comes down, and it's a simple linear wipe, no big deal. Let's see what else. I added grain as well to all of this. And I didn't change anything except for making it monochromatic and the intensity to 0.8 and the size to 0.2, sort of give it that old school TV look, kind of dirty and grungy. Then I also added just a black vignette, real simple. Scan lines, I used Venetian blinds, 50% up here, transition, and then the width at 7, direction at 90 degrees. And it's set to soft light and opacity at 40%. Same thing to give it that sort of dirty, old school TV look. What else? We got this dirty grunge layer in the background. This is just, that's at 10%, as you can see, and set to multiply as well. All I did with this, if I turn off these effects, that's what it looks like. I added a hue and saturation and desaturated it to -100. Then I also added curves. You can see the curve here. It's just crushing the whites and blacks. So that's what it looks like. And then I set it to multiply, right? And then brought the opacity down to like 10%. It's sort of old and weathered look. And you can find, a grunge texture anywhere, really. You can find it at like deviantart.com, or there's another great texture site called Lost and Taken, I believe, and it's entirely textures, grunge, and all kinds of stuff. Really nice site. And then the ramp is just a real simple ramp here on the background. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how you create that. The main bulk of this tutorial is doing the layer styles with this top layer, and 3D text with the extrusion there. So I hope all of this makes sense. I hope I gave you a decent explanation of expressions and how to use that, how to use the index to change successive layers, and an explanation of variables and a little bit of JavaScript, and how to position things that way. So I hope this is helpful, and yeah, I would also play around with expressions. You're going to get a lot of, starting out with them, you're going to get a lot of errors, and that's usually syntax based. I mean, it usually means you're forgetting like a quotation mark or a semicolon or something like that. But also, be aware that what exactly, when you're adding an expression to something, it's important to know what that property is asking for. And in this case, it's asking for this position, it's asking for an array. It's asking for 3 values, right? And we're giving it 3 values. If I just gave it 1 value, it might apply that 1 value to all 3, or it might give you an error message. And that's important to keep in mind, because I made that mistake a lot when I first started using them. So be aware of what this property is asking for, right? Either it's 1 value or it's 3. You have to define all three if it's given you 3 or 2 or whatever. And like I said, it's 0, 1, 2. That's how After Effects looks at arrays. That's how actually most programming languages look at arrays. 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2. See? So I think that's about it. I hope all this makes sense to you guys, and you know, if you have any questions, drop a comment. And yeah, thanks.